Welcome to Daily Office Devotions. I'm Reggie Kidd, and every Monday through Friday, I offer devotional observations on some portion of that day's readings for morning prayer from the Book of Common Prayer. I'm so very glad to be with you this Monday, following the fifth Sunday after Pentecost. This happens to be year 2 of the daily lectionary, and this week we are in Proper 10. Our readings today come from Joshua chapter 2, Romans chapter 11, and Matthew chapter 25. I'll make brief observations from each passage. What a rich juxtaposition in today's Old Testament and Epistle readings. Rahab, the pagan prostitute, recognizes that Yahweh, the Israelites' God, is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below. Joshua chapter 2, verse 11. Rahab recognizes that Yahweh has brought the Israelites out of slavery and is fighting on their behalf to give them a new home. She places herself and her household under his protection. In doing so, she becomes a wonderful picture of sinners who were saved by grace. Paul the Apostle marvels that the descendants of the rescue from Egypt and beneficiaries of the conquest of Jericho and Canaan failed to see the greater rescue from sin and the conquest of death and hell that same God has now accomplished in his Son, Jesus Christ. In doing so, they become a sobering picture of spiritually privileged people who, failing to appreciate the mercy already extended to them, ironically and unwillingly show their need for even greater mercy. Looking ahead to Romans chapter 11, verses 28 through 32. For her part, Rahab looks for kindness from the Lord's hand. In today's reading, she receives verbal assurance that if she does not give the spies away, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land. Joshua chapter 2, verse 14. Her story ends not just with her being spared from Jericho's destruction, but with a new home. Her family has lived in Israel ever since. Joshua chapter 6, verse 25. But wait, there's more. Matthew's gospel places her in the genealogical line that produces King David. Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. Rahab's is humbling, inspiring faith. For his part, Paul looks for the faithfulness of God. He puzzles through the question of whether God has rejected the people God himself chose for bringing salvation to the world. The first place Paul looks is to his own experience. As a member of the tribe of Benjamin, he himself is evidence that God has not rejected the people he foreknew. Romans chapter 11, verse 1. And if in the present it seems that only a remnant of Israelites get what God is doing, well, there's a long history of God working with a remnant chosen by grace. Romans chapter 11, verse 5. It was that way in Elijah's day when God had to remind his prophet, I have kept for myself 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. Romans chapter 11, verses 2 through 5, quoting 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 18. It was that way for Moses and Isaiah. God gave the people a sluggish spirit, eyes that would not see and ears that would not hear, down to this very day. Romans chapter 11, verse 8. Recalling Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 4, and Isaiah chapter 29, verse 10. It was that way for King David, who cried out to the Lord in protest of his many enemies, let their table become a snare and a trap. Romans chapter 11, verses 9 and 10, quoting Psalm 69, verses 22 and 23. Paul is saying that if you look really hard, you will see a couple of things in Israel's situation. First, It's clear that God's gracious choice, which hearts to harden and which hearts not to harden, means it's not about works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. Romans chapter 11, verse 6. Our job is not to try to be good enough to merit anything. Our job is simply to believe in who God is and what he has done and is doing. And when we do that, we cannot help but live lives in gratitude for this grace. Second, Paul observes that Israel's stumbling over Christ, that language itself recalls Isaiah chapter 8's rock of stumbling, cannot mean an absolute fall. So I ask, have they stumbled so as to fall? By no means. Romans chapter 11, verse 11. Paul's hope as Jewish apostle to the Gentiles is that his fellow Israelites will eventually be provoked to jealousy when they see their spiritual riches in the hands of someone else. Paul hopes his fellow Israelites will reclaim their place in the storyline. He hopes they will come to believe, as he has come to believe, that God is bringing salvation to the world through the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, Son of David and Son of God. As he will explain in the very next verses, that's why he works so hard at his ministry among the Gentiles. Romans chapter 11, verses 13 and 14. Paul's is extraordinary, inspiring hope. I pray that you and I have the grace today to be like the 5 bridesmaids of Matthew chapter 25, who keep their lamps full of oil, full of a faith like Rahab's and a dogged determination hope like Paul's, an eager expectation of the day when the bridegroom will return, and he will, for the great wedding banquet. On that day, faith will become sight, and hope will not disappoint. Be richly blessed this day.